All right. I'm going to give us just one moment to wait for some folks to come on, and then we'll get started. For all those who are joining, just giving everybody a moment to jump on. Feel free to join me with a deep breath and a settling in. All right. Well, I'd like to introduce myself before we get started with the topic for tonight and what I have on the agenda. So my name is Mendel, and I'm a psychotherapist in private practice in Aventura, Florida. My specialty is trauma therapy, so helping clients, teens, adults, working through trauma. And a lot of my work has led me also to working with ongoing trauma, crisis work, helping people volunteer work with OHEL, with High Lifeline, in situations where people had to cope with ongoing experiences that they were going through. So tonight's topic, I was actually originally scheduled to speak about psychology and spirituality. And with everything that's going on in the world, I wanted to pivot and still give space for some of those ideas later on, maybe as I speak, but to really address the things that are going on. We're all in it. We're all going through it right now. Maybe a lot of us are feeling a little tired. We have lots of feelings, strong feelings. Many different things are coming up for people. So really wanting to give people support and guidance for addressing what we would call the secondary trauma. Some would call it compassion fatigue that's coming up for people. And as well as how do we care for ourselves, not just at the simple level, but also on a deeper level. If we were speaking about spirituality, how do we self-care in mind, right? Cognitively, in our thoughts, in our emotions, and also in our spirits, mind, body, spirit. So I wanted to speak a little bit about that today. And for therapists, commonly in the helping profession, this idea of being exposed to lots of things, let's say that we hear on the news right now, everybody's being exposed to all sorts of imagery. But more than that, we're also having lots of information being thrown our way. Things that we see, maybe we're seeing the opposite party. Let's say we're feeling a lot of anger towards the opinions that are being thrown around. So those sort of things start to get to us in a different way, not just the imagery, but also emotionally. We start getting tired. We start getting frustrated. And so on a collective level, we're experiencing a lot. And that's where I wanted to start. I wanted to start by just defining what we're experiencing, we can't make sense of what's happening. There are things that are beyond our understanding, but we can make sense of what's happening in our mind, in our body, in our spirit, and do our best to at least manage what we're going through. So the first thing that I would want to almost notice is that what is going on for us? How do we know we're experiencing it? We don't really need to do this, but it's helpful to know, am I experiencing secondary trauma, which is a very real experience for people, right? It's not just an idea. It's something that we actually can notice, describe. Yeah. So feeling maybe a little bit higher on alert, on edge. For some, it's a feeling of exhaustion, a feeling of zoned out, or just dissociated, anger. There's all sorts of experiences that we feel when we're being bombarded with information, especially high levels of information that any soul or any human is not supposed to be taking in this much at a time. We don't always have that choice, as here with a collective trauma where we're experiencing so much. So what can we do about it? We want to start getting into how can we start to care for ourselves? And for me, the first thing that I want to look at is the mind. So what are we intaking? So we're having the news that's coming in, that's affecting how we look at the world. So we're feeling distressed. We're feeling thoughts or beliefs, how could this happen or what's happening? And the best thing we can do for the mind is to be able to calm the mind. So finding, we say classically mindfulness, or finding moments of calm to calm the mind, going out into nature. Additionally, we can start to speak to others. A lot of times what we would have when we would do, let's say we've gone through a certain traumatic experience as helping people, we observed lots of, let's say, upsetting things. We will all sit around in a group. And for people who are listening, that might be just sitting with a partner or sitting with a few people without electronics, not distracted. And each person can just vocalize or speak about what they're experiencing. This is what I feel. This is what I think. This is what is disturbing to me. This is what's really upsetting to me. And just using our words to speak out what's going on, I found that that's probably the most powerful thing we can do, is just to talk about what we're going through. And that's as far as the secondary trauma piece, that we're processing through. We're processing out some of the things that we've taken in. If we're taking in, then we need to express out. So it's really important that we express. So in the mind level, we can just talk about it. What are our thoughts, our beliefs about it? On the emotional level, if we're going to the body, to the emotions, so we want to start noticing, what are we feeling? And that's once we've spoken out and we've kind of started to get clear, we might start to experience an emotion, anger, sadness, whatever that is, sitting with that for a moment, even just vocalizing it. If we're able to sit with it, it might be a lot, it might be too much to sit with. Then we're going to maybe use creativity. So another thing we can use for being able to take care of ourselves is creativity. So if we're intaking all this information, all of this upsetting news, even the good news, as we speak about with these sort of experiences with trauma or distressing experiences, that noise, good news, bad news, but anything that's overwhelming or is more information than we can handle, we're just getting thrown with so much information, we almost need to now express it back out. And a really great way to do that is creativity. So for some people, it's writing. For others, it's drawing. There's many ways that we can use our hands to express. I used to lead a workshop where they used clay modeling to express the emotions. A lot of times when we're just talking, it's hard to really connect to the feelings. So drawing or some sort of creative expression is really important. It's interesting that it's not just a nice thing that we're saying, but since we're all experiencing it, it's almost like a necessity. Like we almost all need to be expressing on paper, in some form of creative expression, as well as talking about it. But there's something to be said about putting it right on the paper. So those are some of the general ideas that we would say about how we can start to address secondary trauma. When we're going through this, and let's say a therapist, we're hearing a lot. Let's say we're going through a lot, more than we would normally do. and we start to feel a little bit more tired, or we're feeling a little bit not ourselves. Some of the other signs for secondary trauma would be we're feeling a little irritable, or we're feeling not our normal self. Then what we want to do is just slow down just a little bit. For some, it could be completely taking a day off, but for others, it's just taking a step back just a little bit. So if we would normally scroll on social media for, I don't know, 2 hours, taking it back to an hour, starting to become a little bit more intentional about what we're doing to take care of ourselves. For me, more than just some of the things I've just mentioned. So we have the mind, and then the emotion, body, noticing what we're feeling in the body. But I find that what I wanted to add tonight is this idea of spirit. We sometimes speak about it as spiritual trauma, or we speak about it as the spirit. And that's the soul. That's the good, the sensitivity in the world. And when we're confronted with what we see, let's say last week, and we see all this imagery, we see evil, or we see things that nobody should ever want to see in their life, it triggers something deep inside of us. It awakens inside of us deep feelings that really question our sense of self and our sense of the world. And therefore, when I speak about self-care, I might add on that it's not just caring for our minds and our body and our feelings, but it's caring for self. It's caring for our soul. And there might be questions that come up, and being able to vocalize those questions is really important, is a really key part to this work making sense and expanding our sense of self, expanding our what we can tolerate in this world. And nobody can tolerate what we're going through this week, but we might start to just be mindful of that and be okay with some of the upsetting feelings that are coming up. And sometimes just the idea of experiencing something so upsetting can be overwhelming. And what we want people to know is that it's okay to be feeling really deep feelings, maybe something that they've never felt before. And because in addition to just the imagery or the secondary trauma, it's personal. And when it's personal, we really have to integrate or be able to talk it through. We can't necessarily change what we can do, but we can start to work at the soul level to start to do things that realign and help us connect to soul. So some examples of connecting to soul, and we see this so well. People naturally do a lot of what we speak about anyways, but that could be reconnecting to our spiritual, religious practice. We see a lot of people that are putting on tefillin for the first time, or putting on again, reconnecting to prayer. So that's starting to get to a deeper sense of connecting to something higher that I don't understand, but I want to connect to something deeper. For others, spirituality means connecting to to everybody else, to other people, to other humans. So reconnecting to participating, contributing, all these sort of chesed that we do. It's not just obviously we feel it deep in our heart, but that itself is healing for this concept of secondary trauma, of compassion fatigue, because we're hearing all of these things. We're hearing all these things that are so upsetting. And when we start to do something at the soul level, that's almost self-care for the soul. So as much as we also want to be mindful and we want to take breaks, we also want to honor the need to do something practical And for each, it's going to be different. And we have to be in touch with ourselves to make sure that we're not doing more than what or not necessarily what our soul needs. And that's a different discussion about making sure that what it is that we're doing is what we need, and that requires intention. Another key piece about this kind of time is boundaries. So it's complicated. Boundaries means that we don't do what we don't want to do, right? That we can filter out what we want to take in, the information we want to take in, and what it is that maybe we don't want to take in. So I urge people to exercise boundaries, not to mean that they shouldn't be looking at anything or they shouldn't be going out of their normal, but they should just be mindful of what is okay and what is maybe not helping them. So if going on social media and seeing everything, it could be helpful to a certain point to keep updated, to be involved, to express, and then whatever that point is after that, that's when we want to be mindful of our boundaries, or where we're at as individuals and also as a people. So those are some of my thoughts. I have some questions here. People are welcome to ask any questions as well, as I look at some of the questions that were just submitted, just like 2 or 3 here. Then I'm happy to answer any others. So I don't know if these are specifically about self-care or secondary trauma, but there are questions that were asked. So how do you incorporate what the Torah says when we see theories around in psychology where there's conflicting values? Okay. So maybe shifting in a little bit of a different direction. But in general, when we see things in the world that are not what we would say the truth, or the Torah truth, it can be really complicated, right? We have our truth, and then we're seeing what other people are interpreting to be other truths. And I would say that not necessarily, just to answer that question, not necessarily is the psychology the issue, or even the specific value might be an issue, but often it's the interpretation, the way we understand the idea. So the way we understand maybe even a concept in Torah, or the way we are understanding a certain psychological concept may not be the right thing for us in that time. And we see this a lot, that people that a certain two sides, if we're seeing politically two sides, really that we could be really misaligned. We could have the truth, but it could be slightly misaligned to what we want it to be. So I would say that definitely follow your gut. And the gut is not even over here. I'd say the gut's in the stomach. So really following our gut, if something feels right for us, and that's really a key point with trauma healing in general, is trusting ourselves in the context of what we know and what we're taught, but using our gut to guide us. Okay. How do I define self-care? So I spoke about that a little bit, but when I think of self-care, I don't just think of bubble baths and walks, although those are really important. I really think of mind, body, spirit. So self-care to me would mean that I'm taking care of my thoughts, my beliefs, maybe the anxiety, the running, the mind, then also addressing the heart. Am I feeling a tightness in my body? What am I feeling emotionally? So that's the body, the emotion. And then the spirit, that's the existential, that's the deeper part, the spiritual part. I almost feel like that's the last part. Once we've worked through what we feel in the mind and we've worked through what we feel in the heart, then we could really address on the spiritual level what we're going through. So I would really want to really be mindful of all three. So if I'm talking or if I'm expressing myself, I might want to think, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I noticing in my body? And how is this impacting my sense of the world, my sense of myself? And these are deep questions, but often just sitting across from someone we love or a family member or friend on the phone and being able to just express with no interruption, just being able to express is the ultimate self-care. So that's how I would answer that. The third question here, it feels selfish to engage in self-care when others are suffering so much. How can I manage that? So how can I be taking care of myself when other people are suffering so much? And this is complicated. Obviously, if you're needed, right, your services are needed, you're on the front lines, you're a soldier, you need to take care of yourself and your ability to serve and to be able to help. For the average person, the most important thing is to be able to help in the way that you can, but also to be a functional human and to be able to whatever it is, to whatever you're doing in your life, take care of your children, be able to function normally. They say that the terrorist's goal is to make people feel terror. That means to disturb their lives, and naturally there will be some disturbance, but our goal is to be able to. And I think that the people who are serving, the people on the front lines, they want people to be able to live and to be able to still um, go on as much as they can with the lives. We help in the way that we can, but as soon as we start doing more, or we start jumping into what I would call saving mode, it can only last so long. So what we're really thinking about with secondary trauma is the long term. It's not just the one time thing that we're seeing, but we're long term. It starts adding up. So we really want to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves in the long term. In a week, a month. Um, we don't know how long it'll go. Not that it's going to be that long per se, but we don't know. So how do we make sure that we're our best self in a week from now, 2 weeks from now? So on the contrary, taking care of ourselves is not selfish. This is a more of a deeper discussion of, in general, if I'm prioritizing myself, then isn't that at the expense of somebody else? And that's where we have to focus on boundaries and say, I can take care of myself first, and then I can care for others. I can be helpful and be mindful and be most helpful um, when I set those boundaries for myself. So if I'm in a calm place and I'm not just feeling on edge or scrolling on social media or whatever it is that I'm doing, but I'm actually in a good place, then maybe I can actually service the community or be able to help in the best way possible. So it's a complicated one, but we really do have to let go of that guilt, shame in order to be able to be there for the people we love in the best way possible. So empathy, but we don't want to have more empathy than is natural. How would I say that? We speak about false empathy, or the idea of that I'm empathizing so much with others that I'm like feeling them so much that it's not even my feelings anymore. I'm feeling what they're feeling, and it's almost a blurriness of boundaries. Um, we see this a lot, let's say, with a parent and a child, that the parent is so worried about the kid that they're like on edge, worried, but the kid is fine. And obviously, we have people in situations, people on the front lines, soldiers, etc., that are, and if we are personally connected, we all are. We're all one family, so we're going to feel that. But sometimes we just have to take a deep breath, recenter ourselves, and check in with some sense of boundaries the best we can. So those are my thoughts. I hope everybody can take care of themselves, take care of the people they love as well, and be there for each other. Don't forget to be a light. If we're a light and we can take care of ourselves, then we can be a light to others. We can be a light to the nations, and the truth will prevail, right? And that's the ultimate healing. Is not just that we're healing what we think or what we feel in this moment, but with trauma, there's a change. Something changes, and we're never the same. And that's not necessarily, I'm not going to describe it as good or bad, but that we're changed. And I'm sure through this, we're all going to be changed. And hopefully it can be for the good, that we can be able to help and show the unity of the nation of Israel. So wishing everybody a good night, and if there's any last questions, I'm happy to answer it. But if not, I will head off for now. Thank you.